In a place where fog is the enemy of sight, hope is measured in light. This is a story of a town where shadows often hide the truth. Elias was a man of pure kindness, a soul who gave without filters or hesitation, until he met a man who saw kindness only as an opportunity. Every candle he made held a piece of his heart. He believed that light should be shared with anyone who struggled to find their way home. His generosity was legendary throughout the coastal village, often giving away his best work to those who had nothing but copper coins to their name. To Elias, a candle was more than just wax and wick. It was a silent promise that the darkness would never truly win the long, cold night. But the arrival of Julian, a merchant with eyes as cold as the sea, would soon test the limits of Elias's open and giving nature. Julian didn't care for light. He only cared for the profit it could bring. He saw Elias not as an artist, but as a tool. With a voice like honey and a heart of stone, Julian began to weave a web of promises that would slowly drain the candlemaker's spirit. The erosion of boundaries began subtly. Julian took the finest goods but paid a pittance, promising future riches that would never actually arrive for Elias. Selfishness rarely arrives like a sudden storm. Instead, it leaks in like slow drips from a ceiling, dampening everything until the foundation begins to rot. Julian demanded more and more, insisting on overnight orders for his ships, claiming that Elias was the only one he could trust with such tasks. Elias, unable to say the word no, sacrificed his sleep and his health to satisfy the endless, bottomless greed of a man who never said thanks. While Julian's hoard grew larger by the day, the light in Elias's own life began to flicker and dim under the weight of heavy, constant exhaustion. He was losing himself in the service of another's ambition. His kindness had become a cage, and the key was a word he feared to speak. Every time Elias nodded in agreement, a small piece of his self-respect vanished. He was being hollowed out, much like the candles he made. Time is the most precious thing we own, yet Elias gave his away for free to someone who would never return even a moment of it. The contrast was stark. One man thrived on the labor of the other, while the creator suffered in the dark, forgotten by his so-called partner. And he realized he was no longer making light for the world. He was merely fueling the engine of one man's ego, leaving nothing for himself. Without boundaries, kindness is just weakness. Elias was learning this lesson the hard way, as his own flame struggled to stay alive in the wind. Then came the night the sky broke. A storm of unprecedented fury descended upon the coast, threatening to wipe away everything in its path. The wind howled like a wounded beast, and the town's oil lamps were blown out one by one, leaving the streets in terrifying total darkness. Julian arrived at Elias's door, not to check on his friend, but to demand the last of his resources during the height of the chaos. He wanted the storm-proof candles, the ones Elias had reserved specifically for the lighthouse to guide the ships safely through the jagged, hidden rocks. "Give them to me," Julian screamed. "My silk and spice are at risk." I need every candle you have to see my workers in the docks," Elias protested, his heart heavy. "Those candles are for the lighthouse. My best friend is on a ship out there. Without light, they will crash." Julian didn't blink. To him, fabrics were worth more than fishermen. He reminded Elias of all the favors he had supposedly done for the shop. "You owe me, Elias," Julian hissed. He used guilt as a weapon, twisting the candlemaker's sense of duty until it felt like a heavy chain. When boundaries are blurred, we lose the ability to protect what truly matters. Elias felt the pressure crushing his chest, drowning out his conscience. In a moment of catastrophic weakness, Elias surrendered. He chose the satisfaction of a selfish man over the safety of those who truly needed him. Julian disappeared into the rain, his prize clutched to his chest, leaving Elias alone in a workshop that suddenly felt cold, hollow, and wrong. The lighthouse remained dark, and the beacon that should have saved lives was empty. All because one man couldn't find the strength to say no. The storm raged on, unconcerned with the moral failings of men, but the weight of Elias's choice was now heavier than the storm itself. Every compromise has a cost. Sometimes that cost is measured in coins, but tonight it would be measured in something far more precious than gold. He had tried to be the nice guy to everyone, but in doing so, he had become a traitor to the very people he loved. Beyond the cliffs, a ship struggled against the tide. The captain searched for the familiar beam of the lighthouse, but found only a wall of black. A sickening crunch echoed through the salt air. Lack of vision led to disaster, as the vessel struck the rocks that the lighthouse should have warned them of. While men fought for their lives in the freezing water, Julian used the life-saving light to count his dry goods and admire his pristine inventory. Selfishness is a profound form of blindness. Julian saw the light in his warehouse, but he was blind to the darkness he had caused outside. Elias watched the lanterns of the rescuers bobbing in the water. He knew that every scream from the harbor was a direct result of his silence. Regret is a fire that burns from the inside out. Elias felt his soul being scorched by the knowledge of what his kindness had permitted. As the wind died down, the true extent of the damage became clear. The silence that followed the storm was more haunting than the gale itself. His friend survived, but the ship was lost. The look of confusion on his friend's face, asking why the light was out, pierced Elias like a blade. Even in the face of tragedy, Julian's only concern was his bottom line. He showed no remorse, only irritation at the inconvenience of the storm. Kindness without boundaries is not a virtue. It is a crime against oneself and the community. Thus, Elias realized his yes had become a weapon. The light within Elias had gone out, but in that profound darkness, a new kind of strength began to flicker, a strength born of hard truth. The morning brought more than just sun. It brought a transformation. Elias stood in his shop, no longer the man who lived to please others. Julian returned, arrogant as ever, acting as if the previous night's events were forgotten. He demanded more, expecting the same old Elias to obey him. He assumed the candlemaker's spirit was permanently broken, that he would always be a source of cheap labor and easy light for his greed. But Elias didn't reach for the coins. He didn't pick up his tools. For the first time, he stood as a man who knew his worth. No. The word was simple, short, and powerful. It was a boundary made of iron, a shield for a soul that had finally learned to protect itself. Julian was stunned. He tried to argue, to threaten, to charm, but Elias remained unmoved, a lighthouse that would no longer be moved by words. "You will pay what you owe, or you will find your light elsewhere," Elias said. He was no longer asking. He was stating a new reality. When a parasite can no longer drain its host, it leaves. Julian fled the shop, unable to handle the light of a man who respected himself. Setting boundaries isn't about being mean. It's about being honest. It's about deciding who is worthy of your time, your energy, and your light. The shop felt warm again. Not because of the fire in the furnace, but because of the peace that comes when you stop betraying your own heart. He began to work for the town again, for the lighthouse, and for those who truly needed him. But this time, he did it on his terms. His yes now had value because he was capable of saying no. His kindness was no longer a weakness, but a conscious, powerful choice. The lighthouse never went dark again. Elias ensured that the light meant for safety stayed where it belonged, as protecting the many instead of the few. Don't become a candle that burns itself out just to warm those who don't care if you turn to ash. Your light is your own. Only when you respect yourself will your light truly shine. Learn to say no, so that your yes becomes a gift of genuine, lasting value.